I knelt in the blood-stained snow and offered my throat to the beast. But what he asked for instead changed everything I thought I knew about monsters and men. The winter had come early that year, and with it came the hunters. I remember the morning their horses first appeared on the ridge above our village, their torches burning against the gray sky like vengeful stars. They said they had come to rid our valley of the wolves, the white demons that had haunted our forests since before memory. But I knew what they truly hunted. They hunted the old ways. They hunted everything my grandmother had died protecting. My name is Serafina, and I was 23 years old when I walked into the frozen heart of the Thornwood Forest to die. I had been the village healer for 5 years by then, ever since Grandmother Mirren closed her eyes for the last time and left me alone with her herbs, her remedies, and her secrets. The villagers tolerated me because they needed my tinctures and my poultices, but they never loved me. I was the granddaughter of the witch woman, the strange girl who spoke to the trees and left offerings at the old stones. They came to my cabin when their bones ached and their fevers burned, but they never invited me to their hearths. I did not mind the solitude. The forest had always been my true companion, and in its shadows I found a peace that human company never offered. I knew every trail, every stream, every hollow where the sacred mushrooms grew. And I knew the wolves, not as the villagers knew them, as shadows and threats and creatures of nightmare. I knew them as my grandmother had taught me to know them, as the guardians of something ancient and precious, as the keepers of a covenant older than our village, older than the kingdom itself. The white wolves of Thornwood were not ordinary creatures. Their eyes held intelligence that went beyond animal instinct, and their howls carried melodies that stirred something deep in my blood. Grandmother Mirren had told me stories of the bond between our bloodline and the pack, of women who walked between worlds and spoke the language of the wild. She said, the gift slept in me, waiting for its moment to wake. I never quite believed her. I was only a healer, only a lonely woman with dirt beneath her fingernails and herbs drying in her rafters. But when the hunters came, something ancient stirred in my chest. Aldrich was their leader, a tall man with cold eyes and a scar that curved from his temple to his jaw. He rode into our village square and declared that the wolves had taken enough livestock, enough lives, enough of our fear. He promised gold to any man who joined his hunt and death to anyone who sheltered the beasts. I watched from my doorway as half the village men raised their hands, as even Tobrin, the blacksmith's son who had once brought me wildflowers, strapped on his bow and joined the hunters' ranks. That night I dreamed of my grandmother. She stood in a cave I had never seen, surrounded by walls painted with wolves and moons and spiraling symbols. Her voice echoed as if from a great distance. "They will kill them all," she said, "unless someone speaks for the old covenant, unless someone offers what the forest demands." I woke with tears on my cheeks and the taste of pine needles on my tongue. The hunters rode out at dawn. I followed their tracks through the snow, keeping to the shadows, moving with the silence my grandmother had taught me. I did not know what I meant to do. I only knew that I could not let them slaughter the pack without witness, without someone to mourn what would be lost. The trail led deep into Thornwood, past the frozen stream where I gathered watercress in summer, past the lightning-split oak where I left honey for the spirits, into territories I had never dared to enter. I found the killing ground by the smell of blood. 3 wolves lay dead in the snow, their white fur stained crimson. The hunters had already moved on, following the survivors deeper into the forest. I knelt beside the fallen creatures and wept, my hands hovering over their still forms as if my touch could somehow restore what had been taken. One of them was a female, her belly swollen with unborn pups who would never see the winter stars. The waste of it, the cruelty, burned in my throat like swallowed fire. A growl rumbled through the clearing. I raised my head slowly, my heart pounding against my ribs. He stood at the edge of the trees, the largest wolf I had ever seen. His fur was white as virgin snow, but scars crossed his muzzle and his shoulders, silver lines that spoke of countless battles survived. His eyes were amber, bright as molten gold, and they held an intelligence that stopped my breath. This was no mere animal. This was the Alpha, the king of Thornwood, the beast the hunters had come to destroy. I should have run. Any sensible woman would have fled. But I thought of my grandmother's dream, of the covenant she had whispered about, of the debt our bloodline owed to the forest and its guardians. I rose to my feet and spread my arms, showing him my empty hands, my vulnerable throat. "Please," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I know what they have done. I know what they mean to do. Let me help you. Let me stand between your pack and their arrows. I offer my life for theirs." The Alpha watched me with those burning eyes. I waited for his jaws to close around my neck, for the quick death I surely deserved for my presumption. Instead, he moved closer, his massive head level with my chest, his breath warm against my frozen skin. He circled me once, twice, his gaze never leaving my face. Then he spoke. Not in words as humans speak them. The voice came from somewhere deeper, somewhere behind my thoughts, a resonance that vibrated through my bones. I understood him the way I understood the meaning of birdsong or the message of the wind. "Your life is a small thing," the Alpha said. "It would buy my pack a single day, perhaps two. The hunters would return. They always return. I do not want your death, daughter of Mirren." "Then what?" I asked, trembling with cold and wonder and fear. What would save them? What can I offer that would be enough? His answer changed the course of my existence. "A bond," he said. "A true bond, as the old ones made. Not sacrifice, but union. Not death, but life shared between worlds. Become what your grandmother never could. Become the bridge. Become my mate in the ancient way, guardian and guarded, wolf bride of Thornwood."
I know you do.
I stared at him, understanding and incomprehension warring in my mind. He did not mean the word as a man might mean it. This was something older, something stranger, a spiritual covenant that would tie my soul to the pack, my fate to the forest, my heartbeat to the rhythm of the wild. I would never again belong to the human world. I would walk between neither fully woman nor fully wolf, a guardian bound by oaths older than memory. "Yes," I said, and the word felt like a door opening in my chest. "Yes, I will be the bridge." The Alpha pressed his scarred muzzle to my forehead, and the world dissolved into light. I woke in a cave, the same cave from my grandmother's dream. The walls danced with painted wolves, their eyes seeming to follow me as I sat up on a bed of dried moss and pine boughs. A fire burned in a stone circle, and beside it sat a wolf I had not seen before, smaller than the Alpha, her fur the color of moonlight with a streak of gray across her shoulders. She watched me with eyes like liquid amber, and when I met her gaze, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. "I am Leora," she said in that bone-deep voice. "I will teach you what you need to know." The days that followed were the strangest and most beautiful of my life. Leora showed me the paths the pack traveled, the hidden springs that never froze, the caves where they sheltered from the worst storms. She taught me to read the forest as the wolves read it, to sense the approach of danger in the trembling of birds, to find food where I had seen only barren snow. The Alpha, whose name I learned was Fenris, kept his distance at first, watching me from the shadows, testing whether I would honor my oath. I missed nothing of my old life except Tobrin. I wondered if he thought of me, if he regretted joining the hunters, if he had been among those who killed the 3 wolves in the clearing. The thought pained me, but I pushed it aside. I had made my choice. There was no going back. The hunters had not given up. I heard their horns in the distance, saw the smoke of their camps rising above the trees. Aldrich was determined, and the gold he promised had drawn more men from villages beyond our own. They were closing in, tightening their circle, driving the pack toward the mountains where the snows would trap them. "We must move to the high caves," Fenris told me one night as we sat beside the painted walls. "The way is hard, and we will lose some who cannot make the climb. But it is our only chance, unless I stop them," I said. "Unless I give them a reason to turn back." Fenris turned those ancient eyes on me, and I felt the weight of centuries in his gaze. "You are not yet strong enough," he said. "The bond is new. If you face them now, you will die, and the covenant will die with you." But I could not watch the pack dwindle, could not count the empty spaces where wolves had walked beside me. Grandmother Mirren had always said that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else was more important. The pack was more important. The covenant was more important. I left the cave before dawn, following the scent of wood smoke toward the hunters' camp. They had made their base in a ravine, a natural fortress with walls of stone and a single narrow entrance. I counted 18 men around the fire, their weapons gleaming in the early light. Aldrich sat apart from the others, sharpening his sword with slow, deliberate strokes. And there, at the edge of the group, his face troubled and his bow unstrung, sat Tobren. My heart clenched at the sight of him. We had grown up together, had shared bread and secrets, had once spoken of a future that now seemed like a dream from another life. He did not belong among these killers. I had to believe that. I stepped out of the shadows and into the camp. The men scrambled for their weapons, shouting alarms, but I raised my hands and spoke in a voice that carried more power than I had known I possessed. "I am Seraphina, granddaughter of Mirren, daughter of the forest. I come to speak for the wolves." Aldrich rose to his feet, his scarred face twisting with contempt. "The witch's whelp," he said. "I should have known you would side with the beasts. Where have you been hiding, girl? In their den, warming their beds?" The men laughed, crude and harsh. But Tobren did not laugh. He stared at me with something that might have been hope, or might have been despair. I ignored Aldrich's mockery. "The wolves are not your enemy," I said. "They have guarded this forest for generations, kept the balance that allows our villages to thrive. If you destroy them, you destroy the covenant that protects us all." "Covenant," Aldrich spat. "Old women's tales. I deal in steel and gold, not fairy stories." "Then you are a fool," I said, and the words came from somewhere deeper than my own thoughts, from the bond that now pulsed in my blood. "The forest will remember what you have done. The land will turn against you. Your crops will fail. Your wells will dry. Your children will sicken with diseases no healer can cure. This is not a threat. It is a truth as old as the mountains." For a moment, I saw doubt flicker in the eyes of some of the men. They had all heard the stories, the warnings their grandmothers had whispered. But Aldrich laughed, and the moment passed. "Seize her," he commanded. "She can lead us to the den." Hands grabbed my arms, rough and unyielding. I did not struggle. I had known this might happen. But as they bound my wrists, I met Tobren's eyes and saw the conflict raging behind them. "Tobren," I said softly, "you know me. You know I would not lie. Please." He looked away, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. The hunters dragged me to a tree and tied me there, laughing about what sport they would have when the wolves came for their witch. Night fell, and the cold sank into my bones. I drifted between consciousness and dream, between the human world and the wild realm I had begun to inhabit. In my visions, I saw Fenris, his amber eyes bright with fury and fear. I felt Leora's grief, her desperate urge to come for me, to fight though the battle was hopeless. I sent my thoughts toward them, though I did not know if they could hear. "Do not come. Do not throw your lives away for mine. The pack must survive." A hand touched my face, and I opened my eyes to find Tobren kneeling beside me, a knife glinting in the moonlight. "I cannot let them do this," he whispered as he cut my bonds. "I cannot be part of this anymore. "Run, Seraphina. Run and do not look back." "Come with me," I said, grabbing his hand. "Leave this madness behind." He shook his head, his eyes bright with tears. "I have made my choices. Let me make one right one before the end." A shout went up from the camp. Tobrin pushed me toward the trees and turned to face the men who came running, his empty hands raised in surrender. I ran, my heart breaking with every step, his name a silent scream on my lips. The forest swallowed me, guided me, carried me home. Fenris met me at the mouth of the high cave, his great body warm against my frozen skin. "You should not have gone," he said, but there was no anger in his voice, only relief, only a tenderness I had not expected from such a fierce creature. "Tobrin saved me," I said. "He may already be dead for it." "He made his choice," Fenris replied, "as you made yours. We honor those who sacrifice, but we do not waste their gifts. Rest now, bride of the covenant. Tomorrow we make our stand." I slept in the heart of the pack, surrounded by warm fur and the steady rhythm of breathing. Leora curled beside me, her presence a comfort beyond words. In my dreams, I walked through the painted cave, and my grandmother's voice echoed from the walls. "You have done well, child. The bond is sealed. Now show them what it means to be guardian of the wild." The hunters came with the dawn. They had followed my trail through the snow, driven by Aldrich's rage and the promise of gold. I heard their horns echoing off the mountain walls, saw the dark shapes of men climbing toward our refuge. There were more than before, perhaps 30, too many to fight, too many to flee. But I was not the same woman who had knelt in the bloody clearing. The bond had changed me, awakened something that had slept in my blood for generations. I felt the forest as an extension of my own body, felt the pack as chambers of my own heart. When I raised my hands and called upon the covenant, the mountain answered. The snow began to move. Not an avalanche, nothing so violent, but a shifting, a reshaping, a barrier rising between the hunters and the cave. The men shouted in confusion and fear as the path they climbed dissolved beneath their feet, as the trees seemed to lean together and close the way forward. Aldrich screamed orders, but his voice was lost in the wind that howled down from the peaks, carrying with it the scent of pine and the sound of wolves singing. I walked out onto the ledge above them. Fenris on my right, Leora on my left, the pack arrayed behind me like an army of ghosts. My voice carried across the mountainside, amplified by the power that flowed through my veins.
I am the bridge.
"I am the bridge," I said. "I am the guardian of the old ways. These wolves are under my protection, bound to me by blood and spirit. If you wish to harm them, you must pass through me. And I tell you now, Aldrich of the Scar, you will not pass." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Aldrich raised his bow, his face contorted with hatred, and loosed an arrow directly at my heart. Fenris moved faster than sight. He lunged in front of me, taking the arrow in his shoulder, a snarl of pain and defiance tearing from his throat. The pack surged forward, their howls shaking the very stones, and the hunters broke. They fled down the mountain, stumbling, falling, throwing away their weapons in their haste to escape. Aldrich was the last to go, his eyes meeting mine across the chaos, his face white with a terror that went beyond fear of death. He had seen something in me, something that told him the old stories were true, and he would never hunt these mountains again. I knelt beside Fenris, my hands finding the arrow, my healing arts flowing through the bond to ease his pain. The wound was deep, but not mortal. He would live. The pack would live. "You were magnificent," Fenris said, his amber eyes soft with something I could only call love. "You are truly the daughter of Mirren, the bride of the covenant." "I chose well, and I chose well," I answered, pressing my forehead to his scarred muzzle. "This is my home now. This is my family." The winter passed, and spring came to Thornwood in a riot of green and gold. I built a cabin at the edge of the high caves, close enough to the pack to hear their songs, far enough to maintain my human work. The villagers learned in time that the wolves were no longer to be feared or hunted. Some came to me for healing, braving the forest paths, and I welcomed them without judgment. The covenant was not about isolation, but about balance, about two worlds learning to coexist. Tobren survived. Aldrich had beaten him for his betrayal, but could not bring himself to kill a man from his own village. When the hunters disbanded in shame, Tobren came to the edge of my territory and called my name. I went to him, and we stood on opposite sides of a stream, a lifetime of choices flowing between us. "I am glad you are alive," he said. "I am glad you found your place. I am glad you found your courage," I answered. "Be well, Tobren. There is no anger between us." He nodded, turned, and walked back toward the village. I watched him go and felt only peace. Some paths diverge and never meet again, and that is not a tragedy, but simply the shape of things. Fenris stood beside me as the sun set over the mountains, his white fur blazing with amber light. Leora played with the spring's new pups in the meadow below, her joyful yips carrying on the warm wind. The forest breathed around us, alive and ancient and eternal. "What now, bride of mine?" Fenris asked, his voice a gentle rumble in my mind. I smiled, leaning against his scarred shoulder, feeling the bond pulse between us like a second heartbeat. "Now we live," I said. "Now we guard what was entrusted to us. Now we remember those who came before and prepare for those who will come after. We are the bridge, Fenris. And bridges do not end. They connect." He pressed his muzzle to my hair, and I closed my eyes. And the painted wolves on the cave walls seemed to dance in the fading light, celebrating a covenant renewed, a guardian awakened, a love that transcended the boundaries of flesh and spirit. I had offered my life to the Alpha Beast to save the pack. He had asked for something far greater. And in giving it, I had found what I never knew I was searching for. I had found home. The seasons turned, as seasons do, and with each passing moon, I grew deeper into my role as guardian of the Thornwood Covenant. The villagers who once whispered witch behind my back now spoke of me with reverence. The woman who walks with wolves, the healer of the high forest. Mothers told their daughters stories of the bridge between worlds, and those daughters sometimes found their way to my cabin, curious and brave, seeking to learn the old remedies and the older wisdoms. Fenris walked beside me through all of it, his white fur now streaked with silver. Our bond deepened with each shared sunrise, each midnight hunt, each quiet moment watching the stars. He told me stories of Alpha's past, of guardians who had come before my grandmother, of a time when the covenant was strong. "Those days will come again," I told him once. "Maybe not in our lifetime, but someday. We are planting seeds, Fenris. That is enough." He pressed his great head against my shoulder, and I felt his agreement pulse through the bond. Leora became my closest companion in the daily work of the pack. Through her, I learned that the pack's society was far more complex than I had imagined. They were not so different from the villagers, I realized. They were simply another kind of family. Sometimes I dreamed of my grandmother, and in those dreams she smiled at me with pride. "The covenant is safe with you," she said. I would wake with tears on my cheeks and gratitude in my heart. The hunters never returned to Thornwood. Word spread of the woman who commanded the snow, of the wolves who sang with human voices. Some called it witchcraft, but others called it miracle. One evening, as the first stars appeared, Fenris stood beside me at the mouth of our cave and asked what I would wish for if wishes were real. "I would wish that this feeling could last forever," I said. "This peace, this belonging, this sense that I am exactly where I am meant to be." "That is not a wish," he said. "That is a truth, and truths do not end. They only deepen." I smiled, leaning into his warmth, and watched the stars emerge until the sky was blazing with light. I had offered my life to save the pack. I had been given something infinitely more precious in return. And as the wolves began their evening song, their voices rising in harmony with the wind and the water and the ancient stones, I added my own voice to theirs and knew that I would never be alone again. This was my story. This was my purpose. This was home.